Hi, Martin, the AKM project guy. Welcome back for part 4 of the King Tut build. I had a little problem working on the facial portion. This is proving to be a lot more challenging than I thought it would be. But to make a long story short, I did manage to get it to a point where I can move on so that I can do the next part, which is to shape the overall underbody so that we can get closer to the final product. Now, as far as the process of how I remove material, I have a little bit of that in here, but as far as the particulars, the detail, I just couldn't get the video of that. So I'm working on that. I'm trying to get better. But what we'll do now is just continue, and then hopefully as I work on other portions that require detail, I'll be able to show you that process. So let me show you where I'm at and get you all caught up. Okay, so from lining up my cutout photo here and looking at it at the angle of the photo, I've came up with a few more reference lines. So this point here, or reference points I should say, that represents the corner of the eye, where the eyeball starts right here in the corner. And up here, of course, the start of the eyebrows. Now, I can't put the eye in. The rest of it, what you have to do is just start carving away and removing material, and then put this back up in place and keep looking at it to make sure that you're kind of following so that it looks like the actual photo. Because remember, again, this is at a different angle. This is more flat, but the eye sits more recessed back. But this is a great place for me to start. All right, so here I'm using a battery-powered Dremel with various tips on it, grinding tips to remove material. I'm trying to get as close as I can along the vertical center line. That's going to be the most accurate from that view that I'm looking at. But it's just a process of removing material and trying to shape it so that it looks like the actual sculpture. So this is how the face turned out after much manipulation, going and adding material and removing material. I'm not finished yet, but at this point I'm ready to move on so I can work on the overall shape of the sculpture. I think it looks good, and I'm pleased with it, although I still need a lot more work to be done on it. Okay, so when this point here where the headdress meets this perpendicular plane of the headdress, I've already started to work on that, and I thought I'd show you how I do that, show you a little technique. So on this side I still have to work on it. So first of all, I went back to my profile here and I found that leading edge, which is right here, this leading edge, and I made me a little temporary cutout, and I placed that cutout here to get that shape, and likewise I did the same thing on the other side. And so now I'm going to try and willow that away and make this side look like this side. Okay, so I want to show you a little bit of the foam removal process. I sped this up for time's sake, but as you can see, I'm just using a blade and just slowly removing material. Of course, I'm looking at the other side to make sure it's symmetrical, and also looking at my photos for reference. But it's just a very slow, tedious process, and hopefully you get to the desired product that you want when it's finished. Okay, so now that I've finished the frontal portion of the headdress, I'm ready to extend back into the back side of the headdress. so that I can shape the overall sculpture. So here again, I'm just looking at photos and removing material. But in the process, I realized I have an awful lot of material to remove. So what I decided to do is come up with a little shortcut. Okay, so basically I made me a little handheld hot wire cutter, and I had a handheld saw that I wasn't using, so I took it apart and attached a paintbrush handle to it, and then hooked it up to the power supply. So it worked amazingly well, and it helped me to remove a lot of that foam a lot faster. So it was definitely a time saver. Once I did that, I went back over it with a knife to smooth out some of those peaks and valleys, and just to continue to shape it and get it down to the desired shape that I wanted. And then after that, I went over it with sandpaper, as you'll see here in a second. I started out with, I want to say, about a 150. And 150 is good. It's still coarse enough. It's going to help you remove a lot of foam, and you can shape it while you're doing that as well. And you definitely want to wear a mask for this. And then after I shaped it with the 150, I went back over with either a 300 count or maybe 400, just to smooth things out and make sure it looks smooth all the way around. Okay, so my next step is to see if I can recreate these bands or stripes that you see on the headdress as you look at it from the front in particular. And my plan of attack on this was to make like a foam wafer, and then put the pattern on it and cut that pattern out, and then glue it down to the surface. So here's how I did that. Okay, so this is my original drawing that I made for a previous sculpture. I had these stored in my computer, and this drawing is based on this photo, actually one side of it. But for some reason I could not find the portion where I did these lower bands. So I had to go back and recalculate all these bands and make a drawing so that I can use this to do a cutout. Okay, so I finished adding the bands to the lower headdress portion, and I just flipped it in the computer, and then I cemented it down to my wafer, and we're going to cut that out and marry it up with the upper half. As you can see here, I made a printout of the upper portion, and I fitted them in place to make sure that they look right and give me an idea of what it's going to look like. And now I'll make a wafer for both of these, and then we'll cut them out and see if we can get them made up with the lower portion. Okay, so the one thing I realized I needed to do was to extend the bands beyond the edge of the sculpture, just so I could have something to hold on to when I glued it onto the surface. And that's what you see here. The next step then will be to go ahead and cut these all out, which as you can see, I did that, and now I'm ready to try and attach it to the sculpture and see what it looks like. Okay, as you can see, I have those cutouts attached to the surface, and they're secured, and I think it looks great. The extensions at the top, I left those in place, and once I extend those bands around the back side of the headdress, then I'll go ahead and trim those off at that point. But for this video, I think this is a good place for us to stop for now. So with that, I want to thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye.